guy traditionally, asks the girl for her hand in marriage, and she says yes. And then they're both sort of in this place where they're like, okay, we want to get married, but there are some questions that, they want answers to.
Right.
And premarital counseling gives them that opportunity to be able to ask those questions. And a lot of the times, the questions that come up have to do with, are we communicating well? Are we able to solve, problems? Are we able to, go through conflict resolution well? When issues come up, can we solve them? Hello, and welcome to another vlog. Today we will be talking about premarital counseling, and we know this to be a really interesting transition from going from single people to married people and wanting to get counseling surrounding that. So today we have Shay with us, and he'll introduce himself.
Hey, my name is Shay. I run the channel called Relationships Examined. I'm very interested in all these things, relationships, marriage, dating, all these things. And so that's kind of my journey right now. And so that's it.
Great. So today, since you're interested in relationships and examining relationships, it sounds like, today I'm hoping that we can examine what premarital counseling is all about. And just for all of you out there, my name is Trisha, and I am a counselor out of Vancouver area, and I counsel couples. I do premarital counseling. I also do counseling with emerging adults. So a lot of times these questions come up, and hopefully I'll be able to give you answers to those today.
Awesome. So the first question is, well, what is premarital counseling?
Yes. Okay. So premarital counseling is basically a couple will come together. So, and this is hopefully a couple that's already engaged. So, the guy traditionally, asks the girl for her hand in marriage, and she says yes. And then they're both sort of in this place where they're like, okay, we want to get married, but there are some questions that, they want answers to.
Right.
And premarital counseling gives them that opportunity to be able to ask those questions. And a lot of the times, the questions that come up have to do with, are we communicating well? Are we able to solve, problems? Are we able to, go through conflict resolution well? When issues come up, can we solve them? We find out this information through an assessment. There are a few assessments out there that we as counselors use to be able to get this data to be able to share with these couples. Some other information is spirituality. Where on the spectrum is their spirituality? Are they atheists versus extremely traditional spiritually or religiously?
Right.
They also have questions surrounding family. Do you want to have children? If you do, what does that entail when it comes to discipline versus are you more lenient? Are you more strict? So there are lots of questions on this survey or questionnaire that will be able to assess, where the couple is based on these questions that are asked.
Makes sense.
For you and Relationships Examined, I know you probably come across lots of data and stats surrounding relationships. So my question to you then is premarital counseling relevant based on the information you found?
Well, pretty much there's a lot of information out there concerning counseling, and it turns out that, I guess, it actually is like folks who actually do these things. They do get the counseling. It turns out they have a 30% higher success rate in their marriage than those who don't do it.
Wow.
So imagine if folks were actually really on top of this, how great their marriage would actually be.
Yes.
Makes
Definitely. Okay, so people, it sounds like people are asking these questions, and they are getting the benefit out of premarital counseling, and the data is showing that 30% of those people that do premarital counseling, there's a success for them afterwards.
Absolutely.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess throughout the generations, let's say back in the 1930s and 40s, when divorce rates were actually lower, we're not sure if their marriages were happier or not, but there was like a 7% chance of folks getting counseling before marriage, and it has dramatically increased it after that. So, we have like 44% couples actually
Yes,
get
yes.
the counseling now.
Oh wow,
Before
that's a really
Yeah.
big leap from 7% to
44.
44. Wow, that is definitely a big leap for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. Do you have any more questions for me specific to premarital counseling that you think people out there would wanna know?
Absolutely. So like when do you think would be a good time to actually get counseling before marriage?
I would say, in my experience, a lot of individuals tend to come after they've become engaged. Some individuals will start this premarital journey before they get engaged, just to identify: should I get married? Should I even ask for the person's hand in marriage?
Right.
But a lot of times, I would say it's better after engagement. Why? Because you're in that place where you've already planned to get married. So you're in that space where you're preparing yourself for this big step of getting married. And the individuals that tend to ask this question before getting engaged, a lot of the times there's either them being afraid or scared, and there are a lot of individual issues possibly that are a lot underneath that they need to take care of. So I would recommend individual counseling before engagement.
Okay, makes sense. What can a couple expect in premarital counseling?
I would say I answered this a little bit before, but yes, there's an assessment that the couple is sent before the first session, and it has a series of questions with different subjects. So like the commitment, communication, conflict resolution, family and culture. So what's their family culture? Are they family oriented? It's also going to ask stuff about spirituality and religious aspect of the couple. And yeah, it will sort of talk about, finances as well as a big part of the assessment. And a lot of times this assessment will sort of give an idea, okay, what are some of the things that the couples agree on? Right? So we'll highlight what you agree on, and then it will highlight some of the things that you disagree with,
Right.
and some of the things that you're both unsure of, right? So this gives the counselor an idea of which areas is the couple low in, and the things that they need to talk about. And from my experience, what I've noticed is couples tend to have more conflict surrounding children, so deciding what to do when they have children. Another thing that's pretty big is spirituality, so either being religious versus not being religious or spiritual. And the other thing that tends to be really big is finances. So trying to figure out the finances, how to do it, what to do. Sometimes one person is more knowledgeable about the finances and another person is more, the spender and frivolous. So it's basically after they've done the assessment and we identify, these strengths and weaknesses, then we sort of, talk about it. We talk about it and the couple gets an idea of, an understanding of the other person's position, why they're the way they are, why they think that. So it's not necessarily that you're trying to change the other person or change their mind. Right. It's more that you're trying to gain an understanding of what they're thinking, and you're trying to figure out, are we compatible? Should we should we go through with it? Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yes, definitely.
Wow. So it's a lot of just analyzing. It's finding out, are we compatible?
Yes.
In a marriage setting.
Yes. But the thing is, you already think you are. So you've gotten to the place where you've gone through hopefully at least a year. Some people have gone through a year. You've gone through, some people 6 years, before they even got engaged. So there's been some time that you figured out, okay, I think we are compatible. I think I want to get married to this person. But this last stage sort of just puts the icing on the cake, in the sense where you're getting a deeper analysis of, some of these things, and you have a third party asking you these questions, and you sort of have to think about it. And it gives you that opportunity before you make that big step to, have peace of mind, I guess.
That's very good. And that leads to the next question, because a lot of folks don't think that premarital counseling is actually very necessary. Like, so they say, well, I will ask my friends, I'll ask my colleagues who are married, that should be sufficient. Well, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that it's great to have support. It's great to be able to talk to friends and for them to be able to give you advice. I would say that you shouldn't depend too highly on just what your friends think, because every relationship is different and everybody's point of view is different. So your friend's relationship might do well, but it doesn't mean that what they think will be what's going to happen within your relationship. Right. Because you and your spouse, the connection that you have and the partnership that you have will be very different from your friend's relationship.
Right.
So what I would say you could do both. You can have premarital counseling so you can get that deep analysis. At the same time, you can have your social support. And also, be able to talk to friends about, what do you think, and be able to think about what you think versus what they think. So you can be able to say, okay, fine, this is what my friend thinks about relationships, and this is what's working within their relationship. Will it work for me? And you can bring those questions to premarital counseling and be able to see, is this something that will work for me and my partner?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. How long does this counseling thing take?
It depends. We have some couples who take the assessment and surprisingly they do very well. A lot of times couples will do very well on communication because again, they've built this foundation already, right? And conflict resolution, they've had so much time to argue and, figure out how to problem solve and such. So, recognizing that this is not necessarily a place where you have to go for counseling for 10 sessions or 20 sessions. This is more a 3 to 8 session sort of thing.
Okay.
Some people may just need 3 sessions and they're all good. Whereas some people might need 4 or 5 up to 8 depending on what comes up.
Okay. Yeah. And how much does it cost?
Well, I think for every counselor, it's different. I would say if you're budget conscious and you're part of a religious organization, a lot of religious organizations, especially Christian organization, you can get premarital counseling for free from a pastor or sometimes they have elders or spiritual care team leaders that will do counseling. So if you're, for example, Seventh-day Adventist Christians, their pastors will do premarital counseling for free. So that's one example. Protestant churches also does the same. So you can check out a church if you do go to a church and you could get premarital counseling for free. Outside of this free premarital counseling, you have organizations that do premarital counseling and you have counselors like myself that would charge for premarital counseling. It's just based on, our rate. So each counselor's rate will be different. You just have to check out the counselor's website and then you'll be able to identify what their rate is.
Would you say that there might be a difference between the free stuff and the ones you pay for? Is there any type of value difference or anything you might get more?
I would say yes. I would say, pastors will probably do premarital counseling like from their spiritual, basis. So for example, if you're a Christian, premarital counseling, you may get that spiritual aspect to it, where there might be scriptures that might back up some of the information that you're getting. Whereas in regular counseling, there may not be a spiritual aspect to it. They may talk about religiosity and spirituality from a general sense, but there won't be any scriptures or anything quoted from the Torah or anything like that. So it will be just strictly the analysis that will be used. And there might be more value surrounding a counseling aspect. Whereas if it's a pastor, it's going to be more spiritual. Whereas if it's with a counselor, it's going to be more counseling based.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. One last question, and it's about the success of marriage. The people who take premarital counseling, as we have discussed earlier, they have a 30% higher success rate in their marriage.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
That is a big question. And I can't necessarily say they have this success rate because they come to premarital counseling per se, because we can't necessarily say there's causation. But it sounds like, there is a correlation, obviously, with them coming to premarital counseling. I would say it has a lot more to do probably gaining a better understanding of their partner and what their partner thinks. And this is not just something that you do in premarital counseling. I would say this is something you should do throughout your whole marital experience in life. Because as you grow with this person, your life, you're gonna grow. You as a person is gonna grow, they're gonna grow, and you're continually trying to gain an understanding of this person as they grow and as they change. So one thing I would say is that through this experience, you're experiencing premarital counseling with this person. You're gaining this understanding of them, and by going through that experience, it's possible that by going through that experience with them, it's helped you to gain a bond that will give you the tools and the foundation to be able to go through the challenges that you might need to go through in your relationship. And definitely there will be challenges.
No one's perfect.
No, definitely not. So that's what I would say. And I'm married myself. Absolutely. So, I went through premarital counseling, and I can tell you there are some questions came up. We had to answer them. And, to this day, I'm thankful that, those questions came up, because I thought that as a counselor, I'd be prepared. Right? But then the person doing the premarital counseling, they were able to ask the questions, and they even had like a manual that came with the assessment that helped us to be able to go through some of the some assignments that helped us to even dig a little deeper, into our families and reasons why, we do or think certain things. And that helped us to be able to gain a better understanding of ourselves and an understanding of the other person. And that was able to, create this bond, this connection between us that helped us to be able to, make that step. And I think that that's what premarital counseling does. Without that, I can't say that, there are individuals out there who don't have successful relationships if they don't do premarital counseling, right? Because I'm sure there are people out there who they're living their lives and they have successful marriages and they didn't do premarital counseling. But I would say that that's one of the benefits of doing it, for sure.
So I guess it would be easy to say that you would highly recommend.
I would recommend, definitely recommend premarital counseling and counseling in general, for sure. Okay, so now that we've been talking about premarital counseling and you've shared some information with us, surrounding the relevance, are there any numbers out there that could even help the listeners, because they might be listening to us and they're like, yeah, but, what are there some numbers, some stats out there that you could share with the listeners that would help them to feel like, okay, I want to do this thing, but is it really gonna help me?
Well, it turns out a happy marriage, right, is one of the most important life objectives of 93% of Americans, or supposed to be North America in the West. They want to get married. Yeah. They want to actually have a family and have a good marriage, not just a marriage, but a good one.
A good one, yeah.
So it turns out
93% is high.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yes, definitely.
Around, say, 40% of married people report that they have happy lives, which is very, compared to just 18% of folks who are divorced.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
Definitely.
Right? It's a good thing. Definitely. Interestingly enough, 75% of weddings occur in a religious setting, making it very easy to get counseling before the marriage actually
definitely happens. And again, if you're in a religious circle, it's possibly free.
Exactly. So there's really no excuse. Just go out and get it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for now. But yeah. It's pretty awesome stuff. I think I'm single, so I'm not married yet, but I would definitely get counseling, hopefully my partner would actually agree with it too. So that's two ways.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been great, Shay, speaking with you about this topic. And for the listeners out there, please check out his YouTube channel, Relationships Examined, and also his Instagram page, which is
Shay.Manhards. That's my name.
Check it out. And also you can check me out. My Instagram page is metacounseling_. And also you can check out my website, which is metacounseling.com. Right? Until next time, take care.
My big first transition was transitioning to a new home, a new country. At the same time, transitioning from the single life into the married life, which for me, I was 30 years old at the time, so that was quite a transition. Learning how to share a space after living alone for a long time, and just all of the intricacies of marriage. And then also transitioning from a community that I really loved, that I had embraced. I had lived in Michigan there for 5 years and was really involved in my community. And so there was a lot of transitions all happening at once.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Meta Transitions. Today, we have my friend Emily with us, and she is an educator. Just looking forward to hearing your story, Emily.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So we'll jump right into it. What is your transition story?
Well, I feel like the last 2.5 years have been nothing but transition for me. So about, I guess in the spring, it'll be 4 years ago, I met my husband and my now husband, and we dated for several months before he had to return to his home country of Canada. And at that point, we had to make a transition in our relationship. And we dated long distance and then later got engaged. And so then I was kind of at a crossroads. What do we do? Do we end up, moving to Canada together, or does he come back to the States? Because that's where I was living at the time. And so we did decide to move to Canada. And so that was my big first transition was transitioning to a new home, a new country. At the same time, transitioning from the single life into the married life, which for me, I was 30 years old at the time. So that was quite a transition. Learning how to share a space after living alone for a long time, and just all of the intricacies of marriage. And then also transitioning from a community that I really loved, that I had embraced. I had lived in Michigan there for 5 years and was really involved in my community. And so there was a lot of transitions all happening at once. And moving to a new country is challenging. Some people have more challenge than others. For me, obviously, I didn't have to learn a new language or anything like that, but you would be surprised at just the little things that are just different enough.
Yeah, it's like a culture clash.
Yes, absolutely. And so I still to this day, now being in Canada for 2.5 years, I still to this day find myself catching, before I say a word, like, is it process or process, right? Miles or kilometers, is it Celsius or Fahrenheit? I have to do a lot of, kind of converting in my head and that kind of thing. So there is enough of a difference that you tend to just kind of always be a little bit like on. And I feel like sometimes I don't fully relax when I'm in discussions with people, because I'm always trying to, if I use the example of like XYZ or XYZ, right? I'm like always on and thinking about it, right? So that's been a big transition. And then transitioning jobs, I was working in a university setting and then moved to teaching for an online school when we first moved to Alberta. And then we had a whole year. Our first year of marriage was in Alberta. I was working online. My husband was working at a university. And we had just kind of settled in and developed a little bit of consistency to our lives. And then we moved here to British Columbia, which was another big transition.
Move. Oh,
yes.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. And you, of course, have transitioned provinces. And, you know, it's not a huge change necessarily, maybe a little bit in the weather or things like that. But just that transition of another place to live, another kind of, I don't know, there's just, anytime you have a new job or anytime, you know, you make a change like that, a move, it's just a lot to get used to, kind of reframing, you know, even what your community situation, that kind of thing. And so we've been here for about 15 months. And so it has been a really wonderful transition for us, but things have had to change in the way that we relate to each other. I work a lot of hours. We don't get to see each other quite as much, like when I was working from home. So that's been a big transition as well. So it feels like the last 2.5, 3 years have been nothing but transition.
I can see that. Like, it sounds like it's been one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And I could see how that could be quite, as you said, feeling like you're always on, not just in the sort of Canadian context of, you know, needing to relate to others and speak, you know, Canadian, but, you know, always sort of in that space of change and transformation and movement. And maybe my question for you there is, how has that how has these transitions impacted you?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I have always been a big planner. I, for several years, worked as an event organizer. I am a teacher, now a principal. I've been in education my entire career in some context, even during that event organizing period. And so I have always been, you know, the person that has like the extra Sharpies and the extra duct tape and the, you know, whatever. I have a little kit of like, just in case this for a different event, or, you know, I'll plan like an extra serving of something for a meal, or I'm just always prepared. And all of this change and all of this transition, it's been really hard to feel like I was prepared for anything.
Yeah, I
right?
can imagine that.
Yeah. So
it's
that
like chaotic, whereas you're a person who's planned out, you know where everything goes and what you're going to be doing, you know, based on your schedule. But all that sort of goes out the window because you can't plan if you don't know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And so I think just bringing a new spirit of flexibility into my life and just letting go and just kind of embracing whatever is coming my way, and just in some ways lowering my expectations for myself and for those around me, and just understanding that there's a lot of change happening, and it's okay to go easy on myself and the people around us. I tend to have a pretty high standard for myself, a lot of expectations, and so just kind of releasing those or lowering them, and just saying, you know, it's okay to not feel prepared. Like, it's okay to just walk into a situation with openness and just embrace what comes. And so that has been a huge change in all of these transitions, is just trying to, you know, live in the tension of not knowing and have an open-handed approach to it.
Yeah, I could see how that would be relieving, you know, so that need to, you know, be on, needing to know what to do, but then giving yourself permission to, as you said, let go, you know, releasing the expectation of others or even of yourself, you know, and sort of giving over to sort of that sense of flexibility that you talked about, and just allowing things to happen and fall where they be. I could see how that would be very, you know, less stressful for sure, which stress is a huge part of transitions. So by going through sort of that process, I could see how that would have been helpful.
So we have a very similar story, I would say, in that we, I wouldn't say that we even got married to our partners like later in life, but just, I guess, like in a lot of our friend groups, like people are getting married more in their early 20s or mid 20s. And so we have kind of a similar story, like you moved provinces, you got married. So what was that transition like for you?
Okay, so I would say, so moved from Ontario to BC with no intention of necessarily meeting anybody or anything like that. It was, I was moving here to go to school to do my master's, and the intention was to move back to Ontario. So after I was done, I was going to move back, right? Then I got here, got into the work doing the master's. In and of itself is a huge transition with school, but met my husband, who was then just a stranger, the first Sabbath I went to the church I was attending here. So I was like, oh, this happened. And then, you know, that in and of itself was, again, another transition in the sense that I wasn't expecting to meet somebody, somebody, and then, you know, forge this really interesting friendship over the next little while. Going through school and that friendship and a few other, you know, bumps along the way. And I would say that transition was chaotic for me, in the sense that there was some uncertainty, you know, are we going to be, you know, in a relationship with each other? Because it was really just a friendship at the time for probably about 2 of the 6 years now that I've been here. During that time, I was like, but I really like this person, but not knowing what was going to happen. But one thing I did do is I trusted myself. I was like, you know what, this person's a good friend. Well, my husband is a good friend at the time, and I really wanted to keep that friendship. So I felt like one thing that I did do that helped me through that process was trusting myself. And then the other thing was, similar to you, I am very much a planner. So I would plan everything out, and what I couldn't plan, I had to let go of, like you. So that idea of trusting myself, letting go of what I couldn't control, and, you know, controlling what I could. And that helped me through school, and that helped me to be able to wait for when my now husband was ready for us to be in a relationship. And I think that can be tough. Like, it can be really hard, especially when you're in the situation, you're like, but I want this now, you know, and you just sort of have to recognize that, okay, I can't control what's happening right now. So that's sort of what my transition with moving here and meeting my husband was like.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great tip, that controlling what you can. I know that is something that's really helped me. I have to find the little moments and the little kind of pockets of things that I can control. And even if it's as simple as like making sure that my kitchen is clean. I know that seems like a silly thing, but just being able to see like clear countertops, if there's something that it does for my brain. It's like, you know, I can't control this big thing over here, but I can at least control that my kitchen is clean or my bed is made, or, you know, I can control maybe like a certain aspect of my schedule. And I found that to be very helpful in all of these changes and all of these transitions. I said to my husband earlier this week, I just want something to feel consistent. Because so much about our life has changed. And kind of the second part of our transition story in marriage is we did a year in Alberta, then we moved to British Columbia, and with the intention of moving into a house that has been promised to us, and the landlords were doing some renovations at the time, and so we knew that it would be a month after we moved here before we would move into the house. But those renovations stretched on and on and on, and in fact are still not done. We just moved into the house about a little less than a month ago, and so that was something that was really challenging because it felt like there was nothing I could control. Obviously, COVID is making us all feel that way.
Oh, for sure.
And has deeply affected my job and education. But then in my personal, my home life and my professional life, it didn't feel like there was anything that I could really have any type of, you know, control over or plan. And so it was kind of a helpless feeling, you know, but I think the things that helped me, or the tips that I would give your listeners, is to find kind of those little areas that you can kind of buy back some sense of agency over,
Yes.
and just decide what that is to you, and then really draw a boundary around that thing, if it's important to you. And if you have a partner or a roommate or friends or family around you and supporting you, like clearly communicate to them, like, this thing is important to me. I know it may seem silly, but I just really need to make sure that our bed is made every day, or I just really need to make sure that, I know that we're going to have this consistent coffee date or whatever it is, right? Or like, our family's going to do a family phone call, every Saturday morning or whatever it is, just to have that consistency to your life when everything feels like it's changing or nothing is very solid or that you can count on it. So I would say that would be definitely a tip. Also, it seems kind of so nebulous to say just like practice letting go, but really taking some time to reflect and evaluate on what is important and what's not important, and kind of choosing your battles. I know even in my marriage, trying to evaluate some of the things, like if there's a little annoyance or a little, kind of a tension point around even something silly about our daily routine, really thinking about, is this something that's worth bringing up or worth turning into maybe a larger conversation, or should I just let it go? And then also maybe sometimes I would even err on the side of that too much, and then I would find myself being resentful later. And so just really clearly communicating, like asking for what I needed. Like, I really need us to do X or Y or Z, right? See, I had to think about that. X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, right? And just things like that. It doesn't feel very fun or romantic to always to ask for what you need, but it's so important. And then that person can then respond and feel like they know how to best support you in a time of transition. I know it's been hard for my husband to watch me navigate all of these changes, because he feels like there's not much that he can do to help or to support, because it's not things that he can control either, right? And so I definitely being really self-reflective about that kind of letting go process. It's not it's kind of almost a platitude that we tell, like, oh, you just need to let it go. Well, especially for someone with a personality like me, or maybe you, who like to plan and like to kind of know what's going on, that's not easy, and it seems very vague. Like like I need something concrete. Like, well, how do I let it go? How do I
we
practice
don't work
that?
well in chaos.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So just prioritizing the things that really are important and matter, and the other things that ideally, in an ideal situation, I would be able to control this a little bit more, but this thing I'm just going to kind of let go. I think
So
has
recognizing
been
it's
important.
temporary.
Yes, absolutely.
Putting it within that context of, you know what, this is temporary.
Yeah.
It'll get back to normal, eventually, hopefully soon. And I think, sort of what I'm hearing from you, and, sort of keywords that I'm hearing is consistency, making sure that, you create some consistency in the chaos, making sure that you're communicating well with your partner, if you have a partner or someone in your space, and sort of that sense of letting go, recognizing what you can't control, and being able to let go of that and recognize that things are temporary.
And cut yourself some slack.
Yeah,
I think that's huge. Self-compassion. Yeah. I've actually probably within the last 6 weeks instituted a new practice. My husband and I usually talk about something that we're grateful for right before bed, but we added in now a gold star. We give ourselves a gold star, and it's just a daily practice of self-compassion. Like, what did I do today? Not like what did I accomplish so much as, maybe what did I let go, or what did I how did I give myself a little grace or a little self-compassion, cut myself a little slack? And that's been an important practice for me in the last several weeks, because I can be really hard on myself. And to just acknowledge that the last several years have been hard, and there's been a lot of change and not a lot that stayed the same or was consistent. And so to give myself a little credit for that. I think, in this age of, we talk about self-care all the time, and it's the treat yourself kind of era, right?
Of course.
But I think a way of treating yourself sometimes is to just give yourself a little compassion, right? I think sometimes those treats can like delve into an unhealthy area, right? Like you don't want to be eating ice cream every single night.
Oh, definitely
I mean,
not.
You might want to, but you probably shouldn't.
I know. Are you sure buttered pecans?
Yes, yeah. But I think just the sense of sometimes you just need to say, you know what? It's okay to recognize that this thing is hard, or that your brain feels tired because you're always trying to speak Canadian, or you're always, trying to find a little sense of, a solid ground in the midst of all the shifting that's been going on. And just to recognize that even though, yes, things are going well and I'm keeping it all together, like it's okay to feel like it's hard to keep it all together, or all this change has been challenging, and to just recognize that, I think is really important. So I would tell your listeners, give yourself a daily gold star, take a look, reflect on your day, and say, that I could have gone down that road and gone into that argument, but I just let that thing go. Or I just built in a little bit more margin. I said no to that thing. I drew a boundary here, and to just kind of recognize that and celebrate that for yourself, I think can be very helpful as you navigate a transition.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I'm taking away from that is sort of normalize your situation. This is okay. This is what's normally going to happen in a situation like this. And you know what? I can feel good about, the things that I've accomplished so far. So rewarding yourself after normalizing it with that compassion and that care. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And I think we're all experiencing a lot of transition just in this COVID-19 pandemic season. And I think that the thing I've been reflecting on for myself and my community lately is that at some point in the last several weeks, maybe last month or two, we've settled into this reality of this is the way things are going to be for a while, even though things have been changing even in the last several weeks. But we've kind of pushed ourselves to this place of, well, I guess this is our new normal, like we hear people saying. And so like I just have to kind of buckle up and, like rise to the challenge. And we're still living in a pandemic, right? And so it's okay to cut yourself some slack and to say, this is hard and this is all new and this is challenging and it's traumatic for people, and the different ways that, our lives are being affected. Like these things are hard. Yeah. And so to just be kind to ourselves, I think is really important.
Definitely. Being kind is, the most important thing anyone can do right now, especially in these COVID times. Thank you so much for being with us, Emily, and for sharing so candidly about, what you've been going through. And I'm sure individuals in our audience can take away some of the tips that you've shared with us today.
Thanks for the invitation.
So Emily, how can our viewers contact you?
Yeah, so I'll give you my email address. It's just emilyberson@gmail.com. We can drop that into the description, I guess, and here on your channel. And yeah, happy to answer emails and get in touch with anybody that has any questions, or if I can help in any way, glad to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you. We definitely will put the email in the description below. Thank you for being with us today, and take care. See you next time.